You have every right to be angry, but that doesn't give you the right to be me. Me, ma, mo, moo, moo. Okay, I'm ready.
Are you actually talking to me, or is that just a warm-up?
That was a warm-up. Welcome to Folie, Deux, the podcast where we rate and rant all things spooky. But really, it's honestly, it's still movies.
Just movies?
Oh my God, it's just movies.
Same old movies.
Yeah, that's how movies are. So we spun the spooky spinner for this week, and what did we land on?
The Evil Dead.
Ooh. It's weird because I always just say like Evil Dead.
Yeah, I think most people say Evil Dead. But no, yeah, we looked it up.
Or the, yeah, that's true. So anyways, I, for one, am a fan of the Evil Dead series, personally. How about you? All right.
Yeah, no, not so much on my end.
Okay. I've been a big fan. Like, I've gone to...
Did you grow up with these?
Yeah, I've watched these for I don't even know how many years. I'd say I like the second one, probably the best. Then the first and the third. The third, it's weird. It's like the third, because they do such a drastic change and like shift, or at least it felt like that to me, that it really threw me off. But the first one and the second one combined is still kind of confusing in the sense of like what they're trying to do. But knowing the behind the scenes, I can kind of understand. But then again, I mean, as an audience member, I don't care. Get your shit together. But yeah, I mean, I've gone to like live shows and stuff, screenings of this series, and it's always been fun for me, especially in the autumn season. But I've learned to enjoy it any time of the year. Yeah,
we're forcing ourselves to do that.
For this podcast. My God.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. So The Evil Dead was made in 1981. My God.
I wasn't even alive.
Me too. You know, it was a college film by Sam Raimi and his buddy Bruce Campbell over at in Michigan. They were
Michigan
college
State?
students. Yeah. I think they were friends prior to that too. But so this movie won Best Low Budget Film, Best Special Effects, and the Catalonian Festival Award in 1981. For whatever that means, you know. But there is just like there's a shit ton of trivia for this movie. I was going to say like the fandom is just huge for Evil Dead, the series, and as a whole, people are really into it.
Big cult.
It's got like a cult. It's got a cult following.
It's a cult classic.
It's a cult classic, as some might say. So like I said, the director is Sam Raimi, a young Sam Raimi. I think he was like 20 or something around the time of filming this. So Sam Raimi is known for these movie series, so The Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness, which is the third, as well as Spider-Man 1, 2, 3, the original Spider-Mans.
Yes.
And I also have Drag Me to Hell, which I've never seen it. I feel like I've seen it, but I don't think I have. I'm sure it's on the Spooky Spinner, and I'm sure we'll come across it. But I think Sam Raimi is pretty well known as a director.
I don't know.
So he's pretty well known within... You're just a casual. That's what you are.
What?
So I think this movie altogether is pretty simple.
Yeah.
You're in a cabin in the woods. And you're stuck at the cabin. And spooky stuff going on. Everyone dies.
Yeah. That's about it.
Yeah. So the cast is pretty small. There's 5 people. Yeah. I don't know why that looked weird to me. For some reason, I think it's because I forget about one of the characters. I forget about Shelley. Every time I watch this, I'm like, oh yeah, she's in this. It's weird. I don't know why. And we were talking about this, and that she
doesn't have a lot of...
She doesn't have a lot going on, in this movie, besides being the girlfriend of...
You have like specific kind of characteristics with all the other characters in the movie, and she just seems pretty bland for this movie. So I
mean, she's there to be possessed and then die I think, first. She's the first one to die. But yeah, so I mean, the biggest name in this movie is Bruce Campbell. This is where essentially he got his start.
Heir to the Campbell's fortune.
The Bruce Campbell. He's like, I'm just a tomato guy. So Bruce Campbell plays Ash or Ashley.
Ashley.
They have him slated as Ashley Williams, but I think they added that last name later in the series. I don't think they actually established that in this movie.
No.
And then you have his sister Cheryl. You have Scott. You've got his girlfriend Linda, and
Ash's girlfriend
Linda, and Shelley, which is Scott's girlfriend. Mm-hmm. That's about it.
That is it.
I've got a huge list of fun facts. So,
do you want to go through them, or should we go through them during the?
Oh, let's go through them during. Okay. I'll give you a little hand signal so you can know.
You just go flip me off.
Or I can just go shut up. But yeah, I mean, with that, Jessica, let's go through the movie.
Okay.
Your favorite?
We come in on this group of friends, which Rob explained. We have Ash, who's kind of our main character, his sister Cheryl, his girlfriend Linda, his friend Scott, and Scott's girlfriend Shelley. They're all driving up to a cabin. I think they said like somewhere in Tennessee. Mm-hmm. I think is where they're driving.
Yeah, the cabin itself was actually a real life abandoned cabin that they found outside the small town of Morrisontown, Tennessee.
Fun. I wonder if anyone ever claimed it after this movie was made.
I've got another fact for that, but we can talk about that later.
Okay. So these friends are driving up there, almost get hit by another car because classic 80s driving, college kids.
Yeah, it's like what?
No one looks at the road when someone's talking. You look directly in their eyes and you don't break eye contact.
It seems like that's always a thing. It's like driving in the 70s and 80s with like teenagers. It's like always just insanely they're driving so fast.
Well, I don't think
reckless,
anyone realizes like
drinking.
how just well, I'm sure we can say this nowadays, but like how stupid it looks to have the driver look back at people and talk to people directly. Like, no, what? Anyways, so people
call people out on that. Like if I saw someone, like if someone's driving me and then I notice that they keep looking away to look at me, mm-hmm. I'm like, you don't have to look at me to talk with me. We can both keep looking at the road.
I've been with people who, when they get on a tangent, they start driving really slow.
Really?
And it's always when I'm in a hurry, so I kind of like, whatever.
I'm just like, let's finish this conversation.
Yeah, like, either talk or not talk, but drive. So they're driving up to the cabin. They cross this really rickety bridge to the point where the bridge actually is kind of rotting underneath their car as they're going over it, which they don't seem to care that much. It's a very carefree kind of feel mm-hmm. throughout the whole movie. They get to the cabin and immediately there's some ominous vibes because only Scott is the one who first approaches the cabin. All of the other kids stay back and just watch him as he walks like 60 feet to this cabin. And like,
they park so far away.
They park so far, whatever.
So the first day of shooting during a scene shot on a bridge, which I'm assuming is that bridge shot, the crew got lost in the woods. They just get lost in the woods. Based on a lot of this trivia, it just sounds like, I mean, they're obviously they're all college students.
I was gonna say I'm sure they were probably just fucking around. Yep. Someone was like drinking beer, and whoever had the map lost the map.
Oh, they were doing activities like that, beer, and much, much more.
Shrooms,
marijuana, possibly.
So they get into the cabin, and they're all kind of settling in. It's super dusty and just really run down. Mm-hmm. But they're like, fuck it, we're college kids. We're here to drink and party for the weekend. Doesn't matter. As they're all settling in, Cheryl is in her room. She's just kind of sketching on this drawing pad with pencil. And then all of a sudden, her hand just kind of like locks up and she just starts digging her pencil into the paper. And she keeps drawing this like square form and just over and over, and she starts
this square form, almost sponge-like
in nature, like a doodle bob.
A doodle bob. We were watching this and we were like,
it actually does kind of look like SpongeBob. It's like if she would have gone a little farther.
All she needed to do is like 2 little like, dots on the eyes. And then I can understand her going,
yeah,
just like screaming.
Screams. Then later,
I just picture that. It's like the shot. It's just her. We're not looking
we're gonna try and put this together.
We're not looking at the picture anymore. We're just looking at her looking at the picture
and screaming, and then a shot.
And then all you just hear is Nima hoi noi, and then you see like it's one shot. You see her staring, and the Nima hoi noi, and then she's like, ah!
Yeah, we'll try and put something together. Maybe that'll be the teaser. So
it'd be great.
They're sitting down at dinner, and Ash, who's making a toast, and as they're talking, the cellar door in the other room flings open. And everyone, of course, goes over to look at it, and they're like, what could it be? And Cheryl's the one who has enough sense in the group is like, let's not go down there. Let's not open that up. It was probably just an animal. Which one of my favorite lines is from Scott, who just like ridicules the shit out of her. He's like, you're so stupid. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in the entire world. He just totally shits on her.
So, a couple things. You can actually see a crew member's arm open the door when it flies open. You can like just catch their arm going back in after they do it. And then 2, the cabin didn't actually have a cellar. So most of the scenes were filmed in the stone cellar of a farmhouse owned by the producer's family. So the last room of the cellar was actually Sam Raimi's garage. And like the hanging gourds and bones are just all tribute to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which came out like 6-7 years prior to this movie. But
so Scott goes down to the cellar to check everything out, to see what's down there. And he's down there for quite a long time. And all of the other friends start kind of yelling for him, asking what he's doing, if he's okay. He doesn't respond. So Ash grabs a lantern that they have and goes down there after him. And this is the creepiest fucking cellar, of course. With, there's no light. It's all dusty. It's all gross.
The pipes are leaking. Pipes are green, or not green, like orange, yellowish drips coming out of the pipes.
Yeah, it looked very oily. So the pipes above him are just kind of just dripping with something. And at the end of the room, there's this door, and so Ash goes through it.
So it's a very slow progression of him walking to the door, opens a door, and then they do a lot of this in the movie where, you're expecting someone to jump out, and it just doesn't happen. So then they continue, and then they jump out at a time that you weren't. You don't normally see in movies.
They kind of
at times that
fool you enough to the point where you're like, oh, nothing's going to happen now. Oh, shit, it does.
Now it does. He goes through the door and then kept walking, and then that's when Scott jumps out at him from the dark. Yeah,
so he goes to the door, Scott jumps out at him, scares him, which at that point, like, you have been down there in the dark for probably...
He committed to this.
10 minutes, just staying quiet. It's like, I don't have the energy for that kind of joke. So... on this table in that room, there's a bunch of just kind of like random stuff. We have a ripped poster of The Hills Have Eyes hanging. We have like a recorder, some...
Which I know that they don't know any lore behind this cabin. It just seemed kind of odd that a poster like so recent like that was down there in a really, really old basement. Really, really old cabin.
A really old basement with, as we'll soon find out, the previous people who were there probably weren't fans of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have like a bunch of shotgun bullets, shells. With, of course, a shotgun that Scott decides to point right at
his head,
Ash's face, which I would want to punch him just for that alone. And then Ash finds this really gross, disgusting book that, how would you describe it without knowing what it is officially? How would you describe how that book looks?
I mean, like what it's made out of?
If you didn't know what it was made out of.
I wouldn't even really know what to think of it. It looked kind of waxy, almost like a candle. It was made out of candle wax or something. Yeah,
well, we find out after, because they bring the tapes up, they bring the book up, and they start playing the tapes, and we find out through these tapes that this is a book of the dead. Not to be confused with the Egyptian one. And this book is actually kind of encased in human skin. And I think there's like a nose and like a mouth on the front.
On the outside.
Which was kind of hard to see until it was
It's a very small book. It's a little petite notebook.
Yeah. So they're listening to this, and it's this scholar who has recorded these tapes, and he is talking about the Book of the Dead and how there are these kind of demons within within this area, or like from the book itself, that have been slumbering. And of course, if you read this passage that's like in Latin or something, they will rise from the dead, and everything will go to shit. Yeah. So, and on these tapes, the scholar reads that passage.
Did he specifically say, like, shit's gonna go down when I read this passage?
I don't think it's just him
recording his live session.
This, and they're kind of following along.
Right.
So he's reading this passage, and Cheryl is getting more and more disturbed by it. She starts screaming by the time the passage is ending. There's a storm going on outside, and right as the passage comes to an end, a giant tree branch crashes through the window.
Very poltergeist-ish.
And Cheryl screams, freaks out, and she yells at them saying, I told you guys to like stop playing this, and you wouldn't stop. And she storms off to her room. And again, Scott just shits on her. He's like, that bitch is crazy.
She's being a baby.
She's being a baby. They turn off the recordings now. They clean up all of the debris and the branch that's been thrown through the window. And everyone is just kind of settling and relaxing. Then we have Ash and his girlfriend Linda, who are just by themselves on the couch. And they're just kind of having this intimate moment where he gives her this little gift, and it's like a little necklace with a little
little magnifying
glass, which I wish there was kind of some significance to that, because I was like, that I mean, my mom has a necklace like that, but it's so she can read menus.
Yeah, it just feels like it could be any necklace.
Yeah.
It doesn't specifically have to be that magnifying one.
Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. During this kind of sequence, as Ash and Linda are on the bed, we are taken outside of the cabin, and we have this kind of weird, obscure view looking into the cabin. And I think we're led to believe that this is more of the demonic presence that's kind of looking in at what's happening.
That's kind of how I looked at it, just because we were just inside, you know what the lighting is like, and then we walk outside. For one, the film gradient is different from outside looking in. And then two, you can see that the lighting is different, and
it's much more dramatic.
Yeah,
there's like some
dramatic.
Red lights in there. It's
basically just like spotlights happening in there.
So we see Ash and Linda in one room. We see Scott and Shelley in their room, and then it goes to Cheryl, and she's just sitting at this desk by the window.
I think it's interesting to also just, now we're seeing the whole house, not just from the front, but we're seeing it from the sides now. So now we have a good idea as to like how big or small this space is. And I guess just more history with this cabin too. Apparently the cabin has its own history with a grandmother and a mother and a daughter. The three lived in the cabin.
Is this real?
I mean, it might be. Apparently.
It might be.
This is just what Sam Raimi said.
Okay.
The three lived in the cabin until the daughter found both her mother and grandmother dead in their beds. She then ran over to a nearby farmhouse where they took her in and took care of her. And she stayed there until she became an old woman.
It was the producer's farmhouse.
The producer's farmhouse. He said when they were shooting, he said this fella from the farmhouse that took in the girl was looking for the now old woman, saying that because there was a thunderstorm the night before, she was looking for this woman, or he was looking for this woman, because she had like this whole fixation on thunderstorms. I think I forgot it in my note, but because like this incident happened on a stormy night or something, it like affected her. And ever since then, like when there's thunderstorms or something, she freaks out and then goes and runs out in the woods.
Same with my dog.
Same with your dog.
I'm joking.
So he was looking for this woman, and because it was possible that she had returned to the cabin, he went there, but as far as they know, they never found her. So
I would put money down that is not real.
Yeah, I would too. I just like it's always interesting just to like hear some of these stories, but you're also like,
maybe
you
that
made
was
a
like,
movie.
I mean, maybe that was like an urban legend that he had in his town that was growing up.
Right.
You know.
Right. Yeah. So that's the cabin, I guess.
That's the cabin character's backstory.
Oh, also, the cabin used to. This cabin lodged 13 crew members, with several people sleeping in the same room. Living conditions were terrible, and the crew frequently argued. The cabin didn't have any plumbing, so the actors went without showering and felt ill frequently in the freezing weather. And by the end of the production,
I told you that wouldn't be a warm cabin.
Yeah, by the end of the production, they were burning furniture to stay warm.
Oh my god. Oh, okay.
But anyways.
So, fun times. So we're taken to Cheryl's room. She's sitting at her desk. I think she's looking over her kind of sketch pad that she had done earlier that night. And then she hears this kind of demonic voice. And I can't remember exactly what it says.
Join us.
Join us. Haha. So it says join us, and she hears that very clearly. So she ends up going outside of the cabin and yelling if there's anyone there. She keeps going further into the woods, which, why?
She said, I heard you in the basement.
Yeah, she's like, I know you're there. I heard you in the basement. She also heard a voice say like, hey, check that out. Not those words, but so she goes deeper and deeper into the woods, and she can hear like this crunching and this crackling in the forest, like kind of in the trees. As a woman, I would never go out and be like, hey, I know someone's there. Come out.
Yeah.
Come out. Like, no fucking
Say
way.
Something.
There's no fucking way. I grab that shotgun and I just stay inside with the shotgun. So then we have all of these kind of vines and like branches start wrapping around her ankles. They grab her wrists. They start wrapping around her whole entire body. And which I actually kind of like think this shot is hilarious just because you can totally tell that just outside of the camera shot, someone has like a little branch that's just kind of like lightly scratching. Yeah.
Well, so this very infamous shot or sequence, but you can also tell that they're doing shots like backwards.
Mm-hmm. So so they wrapped it around and then they pull it off. Yeah. So she is then completely restrained by basically the forest. It's ripping her clothes off. It's scratching her, and it just ends up raping her.
Yep.
Which there's one shot in particular that looks so fucking painful.
It's just.
Oh God, I can't. I mean, I can't even. So she is getting assaulted by the forest.
Yep.
And she's screaming. Eventually, she's able to kind of wriggle free and run back to the cabin. She is being chased. You can tell, like, kind of again, like that camera shot that we had outside of the cabin looking in. We have something similar to that as it's chasing Cheryl to the cabin.
Yeah, it's like a very low kind of floating just above the ground kind of shot and kind of curves around things, and that's how the movie starts too. Is we're in a swamp and we're kind of moving around. The difference with this though is it's knocking over trees.
Yeah,
like full trees, just to show how
powerful it is. Yeah. So she reaches the cabin, and of course, how the fuck is the cabin locked?
I was gonna ask that too.
Because it's these like really old kind of. I don't know. They almost look like fucking medieval keys. Like they're so fucking old. It's this big keychain of old keys that she has to try and unlock. But she came out that door. I was like, I'm pretty sure you. I don't know.
She came out the back door. Which she came out from the back door because her room was connected to that back door. So that was I asked that question when we were watching. Why didn't she go to the door in which she knew?
Yeah.
Then again, I mean, you're running for your life and you're coming to the first door you can
which I understand, but reach. She tries to the keys are hidden kind of on top of the door frame, which she can barely reach. So she struggles to get that. But we also have a window that was broken in that room. That's the window right next to that door. That should have been broken because that's where they were sitting all by the fireplace.
Was it that window? I thought it was the window on the right side of the building.
I thought it was that window because it was the fireplace here because they're all sitting around the fireplace.
It was to the right of the fireplace?
Yeah. something seems off there. But again, like, why wouldn't you, if you can't reach the keys and you're spending all your time trying to reach them, why I would jump through that fucking window.
Well, I mean, not only that, but I mean, this is a pretty small cabin.
She's pounding on the door. She's screaming the whole time.
And even if it is locked, anyone that's there can be like, what's that noise? And then they walk 3 steps and then they're at the door and they unlock it.
Yeah. So anyway, she's
struggling because the key is stuck. The key is
stuck in this kind of like hook on top of the door. She finally gets them down, but there are like 5 keys on there that she has to go through and try because she's not sure which one it is, even though they all look the exact same. So it like drops the keys, of course, and then right as we are about to see this kind of demonic thing swoop up right from behind her, Ash is there, opens the door, grabs her hand, and brings her inside.
So that whole sequence too, with the tree, I guess Sam Raimi, of course, he has a statement about that because that's like the most famous thing about this movie.
Yeah.
And he's quoted by saying like he felt like the scene was unnecessary and a little too brutal. And that his goal wasn't to offend people and that his judgment was a little wrong at that time.
Yeah, I love rape scenes.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan. But yeah, I mean it was pretty intense. And I'm sure for the time too, like that was
pretty brutal.
That was pretty brutal.
Yeah.
So Ash brings her in. Everyone's there in the front room talking to her. And she's like I said, her clothes have been like basically ripped to shreds. Like part of her clothes have been ripped off. She's all bloody. Her hair's a complete mess. Like she's scraped up. She's bruised. She's bloody. And she's screaming hysterically and telling them like, the forest attacked me. We have to get out of here. It's coming for me. It's coming for us. And they're like, hold on there, Cheryl. I'm not leaving tonight. Like we're came here for a fun weekend. Everyone's just so chill about it. And they think like, oh, Cheryl, you wacky son of a bitch. It drives me nuts because she's pleading with her brother. She's like, Ash, you have to listen to me. Yeah. Take me home. Get me out of here. I can't stay here. And even he is very hesitant about doing that. Just driving her into town. Mm-hmm. Come on.
Also in that specific scene, Scott goes to say something and then he stops and then he like throws his head back and then steps literally out of the shot. Mm-hmm. And it was just because he blew his line, but they still kept it in the shot.
So that was just his personality shining through. Fun. She eventually convinces Ash to take her into town. They jump in the car and he's trying to start the car. It won't start. And she tells him the forest won't let us leave. Like, I knew this would happen. As the other 3 kids are watching from the doorway of the cabin. Mm-hmm. Eventually the car does start up and Ash gives her this very like, you dumb bitch look. Which again, whether or not her story about being attacked by the forest is true, something clearly very traumatic and violent happened to her.
You know what I forgot to say?
What?
I guess it's more so just like when the original script called for all the actors to be smoking marijuana when they were first listening to the tape.
Yeah, Cheryl's the only one who's smoking, and she's only smoking for one tiny little scene.
And the actors decided to do this for real, and the entire scene had to be shot later due to their uncontrollable behavior. I don't know what that means by uncontrollable behavior.
Were they just laughing too hard, or were they actually freaking themselves out? I don't know. They are driving to town, and they're about to go over the bridge that they had crossed, but there's a sign that they had passed just after they crossed the bridge the first time that's completely knocked down and like fucked up over on the side of the road.
Weight limit of 3 tons.
Yep, that's what it said.
That was a weight limit.
Yes.
I'm just saying because it's something strong had to be strong.
Yeah.
To break that fucking bridge and to bend it the way it did.
The bender.
Yep. It's a bending Rodriguez.
So Ash stops the car and it's all foggy. He gets out and he goes to try and see the state that the bridge is in because something has rolled through there that even knocked over this big metal sign. Cheryl goes out after him and she sees that this bridge that was I think it was like kind of made of like iron and then wood on top. The iron that was the support and kind of the frame of the bridge has all been curled in. And I really like this because it actually looks like a hand that's containing them in this area. Mm-hmm. So I, as much as I have issues with this movie, I do like that part. So Ash comes back to her. They see this. And so they have to, this is the only way out, basically, that they know of. Yeah. So They go back to the cabin, and they're all sitting there, and they're like, okay, we're just going to leave in the morning. We'll just have to spend the night here. It'll be fine. And everyone kind of calms down a little bit more. They clean Cheryl up, and they're all in the main room again. Shelley and Linda start playing this kind of card game where Linda's trying to guess the number and the suite of the card that Shelley is kind of flipping through. And this reminded me of Ghostbusters. So I don't know if Ghostbusters was kind of like paying homage to this movie, but when they're in the basement and they're trying to do ESP with the grad student and the really pretty girl, and he keeps buzzing the grad student even though he's like getting them right, but no.
I don't remember that.
It's pretty funny.
Okay.
I like it. And I don't even know if these are connected, but that's immediately what my mind was taken to, because Bill Murray is sitting there with the two students, and the really pretty girls, she's guessing them all wrong. And he's like, oh my God, that's right again.
Oh, okay.
So, which is what Shelley does to Linda. She's like, yeah, that's right, even though it's completely off. So they're flipping through this, and before Linda can start to answer some of them, in the corner, Cheryl is reading them off, and she's staring out the window. She's not looking at the cards, or she can't see them or anything. And she's just going through them one after the other, calling the exact number, the exact suite, to the point where Shelley ends up, she can't even flip them fast enough. Yeah. And then Cheryl turns around, and she looks like Swiss cheese that was thrown in a garbage disposal. I will say the makeup is there are some parts that are fine, but the overall face makeup looks so terrible. Yeah,
it's like they're wearing like a face mask, or they're wearing like liquid latex that's been like kind of shredded.
It almost
and then they
like
have to re-put it on.
Off just kind of like the very initial face part of a Halloween mask, and just kind of stuck it on a little bit and tried to glue down the edges, because it looks like they just put something over her face. So she's now possessed, and she ends up screaming and attacking them, and she grabs a pencil that was on the floor, and she ends up stabbing Linda in the ankle and just kind of digging that in, which that was gross to watch.
That was pretty brutal.
So that was good. Mm-hmm. I think she knocks Ash over, and this is the first time he hits. There are these super rickety, slender, I don't even know if you would call them shelves or bookcases or what.
It's just shelving that's intended to be knocked over.
Yeah, it's just a few pieces of plywood, and Ash gets knocked into them. And this happens a couple times where he gets knocked into it and falls to the ground, and he has his arm through a piece. And it looks like he's too stuck to get up, and it's too heavy for him to move.
You can definitely tell that that's what they wanted him to do. They want him to, because they're like, yeah, I know it's shit, but it's got to be heavy enough for you to,
to be stuck under.
To be stuck under and allow some time.
2 pieces of plywood.
It looks so flimsy. You're just like, just get it off of you. Just get it. What are you doing? Just get it off.
It's so bad. But eventually the guys are able to knock Cheryl over and kind of get her into the cellar. Through that kind of door that had popped open earlier. So they get her into the cellar, and there's also a scene where Scott is knocking her on the head
with the butt of the axe.
With the butt of an axe, and it's just this doll that he's hitting. And it just
looks like he's hitting a Muppet. I
had to go back and kind of just go frame for frame to look at this doll, because it's so bad. Yeah. It's so terrible, but it's hilarious. They end up closing the latch on the cellar and being able to kind of change it up or chain it up. There's enough room where Cheryl can kind of poke her or just pop her head up. She can't get out or anything like that, but you can see her, and you can and she's talking to them, and just laughing after everyone's been basically thrown around the room and attacked, and telling them that they're going to join her, and all of them are going to die.
I'd say probably some of the best makeup is for those shots where you just have her holding the cellar latch open to give some of those lines, or when she's laughing and screaming, there's shots of her laughing and there's blood coming out of her mouth and stuff. And I'd say those shots look pretty good. And we talked about how some of those shots were really inconsistent in the sense of how she looked, because some of them you're like, what the hell happened? Here's what I think. Because we said that basement. So that basement is not a real basement.
Yeah.
They cut open that whole space and then dug a hole, and that hole is big enough just for like a small ladder to go down. And I think you can have a couple people down there. I'm not really sure, but
that was their bathroom.
Yeah, that was a poop pit. But yeah, so I think because of that, they were at the cabin. Those shots were done at that cabin. Whereas there's other shots where you see we're like in the basement with them. So there's that one shot where she's
shots like, where you see her from the like main level of the cabin, just kind of her peeking out from the floor, and then we have shots of her in the pit. Right. So, and that's why I'm saying I think they intentionally made it darker. Yeah. So we did, because this is a different place now. This basement is in that producer's basement. I don't have an issue with like the location and the like look of it. It just looks like they used different makeup. What I'm saying is they shot everything they could shoot at that cabin, and then they had to shoot the rest of the shots somewhere else. Yeah. Meaning they probably didn't have all the actors with them at that time. So then for that specific shot, that probably wasn't her, and it was someone else that had to put on this weird mask to look kind of like her. And then that's why they make it really dark, so it's not as noticeable. I think that's what the progression was, because I doubt that they shot those basement scenes first and then went to the cabin. I'm sure they did everything at the cabin first and then had to do all those other shots later. I take issue with this. I didn't know this until I looked this up, but I think that's the thing. It did look really bad. They're able to put Linda, they get her to sleep somehow. That really tired her out, getting fucking stabbed in the ankle. Ouch. Oof. Oof, go to bed. And even then, they still aren't like, we have to get out of here. Because they do reach a point where they say, we have to get out of here. And he's like, you're not walking on that. That's not the point where they say, we have to get out of here. Because so they're like, okay, you know what, we'll make it through the night. It'll be fine. Everyone will be okay. And then I think Shelley at that point, because Linda's in bed, everyone else is kind of in that main room, and Shelley is so freaked out that she's like, oh, I'm just going to go to bed. So she goes to... Did she say that? I thought it was just like, you should probably... I think, weren't they like holding each other and he was like, you should go to bed? Was it him telling her that? I don't know. Yeah. Shelley goes to bed. Shelley goes to bed. God. Shelley goes to bed. And as she's in there, again, we're taken out of the cabin where we have this kind of demonic view looking in at Shelley in her room. And I think the glass shatters again. Yep. Just this time in her room. So her bedroom window shatters and Shelley screams. And her bedroom is like right off of the main living room that everyone else has been in. It's that first door right next to the sofa. Ash doesn't fucking move. Yeah. Scott slowly gets up and he has this kind of like, I wonder what that noise was. Like, it sounds like she, I don't know, dropped the soap in the shower or something, or dropped her like shampoo in the shower, something like that, where it's like, doesn't, like, it should warrant a more intense reaction than slowly getting up and like maybe going to check. Yeah. Yeah. No. It's spooky movie trying to be spooky, or spooky movie just doing spooky movie things. Being stupid. Yeah. So he goes into their room. And he just kind of looks around and he sees that the window has been shattered. The wind is blowing into the room. And he doesn't at all call out her name because she's not in the room. Yeah. That he's like, first, like, he can't see her. He looks out the window, again, with the same stupid look on his face. I hate Scott. Because earlier, too, in the film, they were like joking around and she had like said something about, I don't know, a game or something like, oh, I'm gonna win, or something. It was something very like nonchalant, whatever, and he goes, haha, I'm gonna break your face. I mean, we all get competitive, don't we? And so, when he delivered that, I was just like, Jesus Christ. But so he can be intense. Yep. But so again, he's looking around like a fucking idiot, and then this is when we have some of those kind of like teaser shots where he sees the closet door and he quick opens the door and nothing's there. And then he goes to the bathroom and the shower curtain's fully drawn. And then he goes and he rips the curtain back and nothing's there. And then he goes back to the room and there's this like little closet door that's like been opened. And he's like, Shelley? And I think she bursts out of that, attacks him. That fight kind of ends up going into the main room where Ash is as well. And I think Ash has the axe at that point.
He's holding the axe the whole time. He's just not doing anything.
Yeah, so he's standing there.
He continues not to do anything
basically
so
in
far.
shock the whole time.
So far, Scott's been the only one that's actually like fighting back.
Yeah, Scott was the one who knocked Cheryl into the basement. Yep. So he's the one who's been insulting everyone.
He's doing it all.
Yeah, he is. So he's being attacked by Shelley, and I think like there's a struggle where she's trying to put him into the fire, and then he tries to stab her with a knife, to where she ends up somehow biting off her hand for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know why she ends up biting off her hand.
Yeah, I think that's another.
It's just like a random kind of like, look how crazy
person
I am.
does possess things.
Yeah, so she bites off her hand. He's still struggling with her. I think he gets in like a stab or two, and he's also yelling at Ash and like, hit her, like get her, do something. I think, does Scott take the axe? Okay, so Scott takes the axe from Ash, or he takes
He takes the knife that the dagger that she was holding.
Okay, so Scott takes. Right, he's already stabbed, but I'm saying like.
Oh, this is after she got stabbed?
Yeah.
Oh, so she's on the ground?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm trying not to go through every single motion.
But what I was going to say is this is the first time that we see these like possessed people like bleeding, and specifically they're like possessed bleeding, which is like white substance
like when
they cough up and stuff.
Yeah, like when Scott stabs her, she not only spits up blood, but she spits up like milk.
So and obviously, yeah, that what they used was 2% milk.
They couldn't even do whole.
No, he chose to show. He did that to show how the possessed aren't normal beings, and also to mix it up so the MPAA wouldn't give them an X rating.
Oh.
Which that's still kind of relevant today.
Milk is pretty wholesome.
You replace like actual blood. That's like with Aliens or something. You can make like a really gory and bloody movie with aliens, but you use green blood instead of like real blood, and you're going to get a lower rating. Mm-hmm. But so he takes the axe.
He just kind of added in milk, though. He didn't really take out the blood.
No, it to me it seemed like weird like layers. It's like
it was first they spit
it's the
out
flesh
blood
wound for the blood, like, ugh, and then you're like, oh no, you really got me.
And then it's like first it's the blood, then it's the milk.
That's when you know you really got him. I
mean, how many stabs does it take to get to the center of a zombie? The world may never know.
Move on.
So eventually Scott gets the upper hand, and he takes the axe from Ash, and he's able to chop up Shelley.
You laughed at that like first scene when he just like hits.
Yeah, because
it's the dummy, obviously.
Yeah, so we see the camera shot is the back of Shelley's kind of head is closest to the camera, and then beyond her, we see Scott facing the camera with the axe, and he goes to swing it, lands directly on her head, and it goes down so fast.
It's like obviously he's hitting
like
a dummy.
A dummy like puppet that it's just like, which is just, it's so hilarious because it's like they couldn't even put I don't know like something a little bit more substantial in that dummy, like even just a block of wood or something. But
maybe he hit it that hard.
Yeah, I mean, if they were burning furniture by the end, they were probably.
I think they were worried about more other things.
Wood in the forest. But yeah, so he's able to dismember Shelley. Ash is still in complete shock because Scott. Do they mention in the recordings that you have to bury the bodies? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Or
I don't know.
I'm
if
not
they
sure
do.
about burying. I know that's a thing in the second movie.
Yeah, they do say in the recordings at one point, the scholar has figured out that his wife is possessed. Yep. And he is telling this recording that you have to like dismember the bodies in order for them to be completely kind of at rest.
Demonized.
And so
what kind of demons were they again? It was like Babylonian demons or something. It's a different kind of demon. Like I feel like it's demons.
Babylonian.
Yeah. It's like I feel like I never Sumerian.
I don't know.
I feel like I never hear about like. I feel like when I just hear demons, just like, oh yeah, there's demons.
Yeah.
And like, no, these are Babylonian demons.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's
very specific.
The differences.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott is able to dismember her, and he tells Ash that we have to bury her body outside, which Ash protests, saying, "We can't bury Shelley."
She's our friend.
She's like in 10 pieces after she's like, again, looks disgusting.
I think it looked pretty cool too with like some of the limbs.
Some of the limbs are twitching and which, that was pretty good. Eventually they take out all of her body parts and they bury her outside.
Yep.
So that's kind of the end of her. So at that point, that's when Scotty, I think they either go back in the cabin or something, but they're discussing that Scotty now wants to leave. And there's a possible trail that he knows of that can lead them out of this area. They don't have to take the bridge, which fuck Scott because, fuck Scott because during all of this shit, he's like, no, it's like, we'll stay the night. We'll be fine. And then once he gets attacked, he's like, I'm not fucking staying here another minute. And Ash tells him, Linda's still in there. Her ankle's busted. I don't even know if she can walk on it. And he's like, screw her. That's your girlfriend. That's your problem. Goodbye. And he just leaves.
He said he knows a path?
Yeah.
When did he ever go outside? Or I guess he was cutting wood at one point. But...
Well, he was cutting wood, but he was also the person, Ash was giving the directions as they were there, but Scott was the one who found the cabin in the first place. So he was kind of the one who set up the weekend. So again, fuck Scott. Okay.
Yeah.
So Ash goes, after Scott takes off, Ash goes in to check on Linda and make sure that she's all right. And she is possessed as well, which I was kind of surprised that she was the second to be possessed because I figured after being stabbed by someone who's possessed.
Was she the third?
Leech into you. No, she was the one who got stabbed.
In the ankle?
With the ankle. She was the first one who got stabbed, I think.
She wasn't possessed, though, at that time.
Right, but that's what I'm saying is, like, she was the first one to be stabbed by the possessed.
Oh, yeah, I got you.
Yeah. It was a pencil. It wasn't anything demonic, but...
'Tis a flesh wound.
'Tis but a flesh wound. So, Ash freaks out, because she, I think, just kind of, like, pops up on the bed, and she doesn't really chase after him.
She's a different kind of... So what they call them is deadites, too.
I'm sorry, what?
Deadite.
Deadites.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think they say that in this movie.
Yeah,
but...
they don't say, they definitely don't say that. Unless the scholar refers to
He might
them.
have. Yeah.
But, so Ash runs out of the room, back into the main living room, and Scott stumbles into the living room from outside, and he's been completely, like, ripped up, attacked by the forest. And, of course, he says, oh my god, Cheryl was telling the truth.
It especially like that's when you said don't you see Ash, they're alive, like his scream is higher than normal, and apparently it was actually Sam Raimi's voice meshed with his scream or something like that.
That's interesting. But yeah, so Scott is telling Ash that it's the forest and the trees that are attacking him, so it's everything's alive outside. He's talking to Scott, and Scott is still pretty much himself, even though he looks physically like he's changing into a demon. He is able to sit Scott down on the couch, and Scott kind of loses consciousness. And then we hear this really creepy, witchy laugh come from behind Ash, and he turns around, and Linda's sitting on the ground right in front of him. Almost like very kind of like doll-like possessed. And so she is just kind of messing with him there. And then she throws her head down and is kind of crying. And when she lifts her head back up, it's a normal Linda. She doesn't look possessed or anything, and she's crying. She's saying, Ash, don't let them take over me again. I don't want to do that. And he lies to her, that son of a bitch. And tells her, like, of course, I won't let anything happen to you. And then we hear Cheryl's normal voice coming from the cellar, and the cellar door is completely closed. And she's pleading for Ash, saying, I'm fine. Like, it's okay. I'm all normal now. Please let me out.
I got better.
Well, I got better.
We just watched that movie.
Yeah, we just watched Monty Python. Yeah. So Ash goes over, and he's trying to, because he's calling out for Cheryl as well, and he kind of puts his head down to the ground to hear her response because she's not responding anymore. And then she busts her arms through the wood and tries to, like, strangle him. So, of course, she's not.
Trick.
Yeah, it was a trap. It's a trap. We didn't just watch that.
And then we go back to seeing Linda laughing.
Yep,
in her
Linda's back.
trance.
She's on the floor again.
And for, I guess, so during the scene where the scenes where she's possessed, the makeup artist originally wanted her makeup to look like a snake-like creature.
That was not a snake at all.
And you can tell this, or like you can kind of see this. I was looking for it, but when she's being dragged outside later, there's in a scene you can kind of see in her face, but I didn't get that, and I think they ended up going with the doll look.
Well, there are painted eyelashes on her, so like almost like exaggerating the eyes,
and yeah, especially the eyes too. So because of the low budget, contact lenses as thick as glass had to be applied to the actors.
Oh fuck no!
To get the demonic.
That's why their eyes look so bulgy.
Yep. And the lenses took 10 minutes to apply and can only be left on for about 15 minutes because eyes could not breathe with them applied. And Bruce Campbell, he commented that the effect of wearing these lenses, they was like putting Tupperware over their eyes.
Oh my God.
It's insane.
That's
They're rough. All blind now. But yeah, I mean, that's terrible to hear or to read too, because there's at least 3 of them had to put them on.
Oh, absolutely. And for the majority of the movie. Yeah. That's disgusting. Ash finds Linda. She's like Rob said, she's possessed again. And she's just kind of cackling at him this whole time while he is trying to either wake up Scott or talk to Scott. And he is just basically being driven mad by everything that's going on. So there's this kind of like back room shed in the cabin that he brings her to.
Yeah, we see it originally when Scott goes through and kind of looks through it. Which, by the way, he like turns on the light and then he just walks out and keeps. I'm pretty sure the light's still on.
I mean, they're not paying for electricity, so he brings it to, and we have the kind of classic like all these preparation shots of like pulling the chains, locking her down, starting the chainsaw.
It's very Sam Raimi.
And and I think he had knocked her out at this point because she looked almost like herself at this point. She didn't have the kind of gross, almost like scaly like skin as the others at that point. And so he's looking at her.
No, this is after he stabbed her and everything.
When did he stab her?
Because he dragged her outside and then he went back in the house and then talked to Scott more. And then I think she came through the door or something again. And this is when she has the knife and then stabs at his arm. And it's that whole sequence because then later she gets stabbed and then he comes back out to essentially cut her off.
So he is looking at her, can't fucking kill her. Yep. So this is when he brings her back outside. And
I just want to say too, that sequence that I just talked about too, that was the other instance where she like bitch slaps him into another bookcase in which he like can't get out of.
It is probably 4 pieces of wood. Yeah. 4 thin pieces of wood. There's no back to it.
No.
There's nothing.
No, there isn't.
And he cannot get up.
He just like curls his arm around.
He curls his arm around like one of the like pieces of plywood, and I don't know.
If the playoffs, which I'm assuming they will for basketball, happen again this year, we'll watch a couple games because sometimes players literally do stuff like that with other players to get a foul. They'll throw them against bookcase, and then they'll swing their arms around each other. They'll like intentionally curl their arms around. Yeah. So then they try to like move, and then they go, "Ugh," and it's called flopping. Yeah.
Yeah. There's this one person I knew where we were like, a bunch of us were driving in his car. We were in his car. He was driving, and he had one of those steering wheels that had like the 3 big kind of open sections in it. And he put his arms through it, just kind of playing around driving like that. And then he got stuck.
Oh my God.
We're like, you fucking idiot. It was fine. We were going slow, but
you were parked.
We weren't even in the car. Yeah. So, so he now is taking her outside the second time, and they're struggling again. He, I think she gets him on the ground, and she jumps.
They do the
over him.
They do the whole like eye thing that they did.
I didn't say the eye thing.
I know you didn't, but they do this whole like thing where he looks at her, she had her eyes open, and she closes them when he looks over, and it like just goes back to another scene, which whatever. It was very awkward scenes to begin with. But they do touch back on it.
It's like I was saying in the movie, because it's this kind of like little playful game that they do where he's pretending to be asleep and she looks at him, and they go back and forth with these shots of like him pretending, her looking,
and to be fair, like I think the chemistry between the two is very odd. It feels forced, but to be like to be fair, when I'm like, I don't like that scene, then again, that's literally the only other scene that you see with the two of them interacting with each other too.
Yeah, it's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, so she has him on the ground. She's a ways back, and she jumps to kind of get on top of him, and he's able to grab a shovel and slices it right as she's about to land on him, and he decapitates her.
Yep.
Her kappa is detated.
They sharpened that shovel. That's a sharp ass shovel.
My knives aren't even that sharp.
We don't know that.
I sharpen them like every. You want to try it? So, I'll be Ashy Linda.
Okay.
So, she, her body's on top of him, and again, we have the classic blood pouring into his mouth shot. My favorite shot. But like Rob pointed out, it's not just like this body on top of him, even though we know Ash is not strong, he could not move that body, but her body's still moving.
Yeah, her legs are moving.
She's still trying to pin him down.
It's not like a limp body.
No, because her head has landed perfectly, just like a couple feet away from him, and she's just kind of cackling again, insulting him. Yeah. And he is able to like move the body off. And does he fully dismember her then?
He then buries her after that.
Okay, so he buries her. Ash runs back to the cabin, and between the time that he was kind of struggling with Cheryl struggling with Linda, and now Cheryl has gotten free from the cellar.
Yep.
And he returns to the cabin to see the cellar door has completely flown open and kind of like broken off its hinges. Cheryl jumps. Oh, Cheryl apparently was outside, and she jumps at the window to try and get in to get him.
Yeah, it was an interesting.
Which
you're just like, Cheryl, where are you? And then she just like is hiding behind the window out there.
Place for him. He shoots at her. She doesn't die. And then Ash, at this time, finally puts stuff up around the doors so that she can't get in to try and barricade himself. Mm-hmm. He runs down to the cellar now that he knows that it's clear, and he goes to grab the shotgun shells. I always want to call them bullets or pellets. He goes to grab the shotgun shells, and at this point, when he's down in the cellar, he looks up at the pipes, and some Cheryl probably wrapped a like piece of big giant fabric around it, and we can see that what's seeping through the pipes is now blood. Mm-hmm. And we have this kind of like weird shot of everything in that cabin starts to fill with blood. So like blood is coming out of the like cracks of the wall, from the light bulbs. There's a projector that starts playing, and we see blood pouring onto. We have that music. Yeah. And then Ash is standing right under the pipes. The pipes burst. And again,
he goes,
gargles all of the fucking blood.
I forgot to say, when he shoots at the Deadite, which is I guess what they're called, but through the window, mm-hmm. and you can see like an explosion of blood, he's actually shooting a real life ammunition at the dummy, and because it caused the scene to look more realistic.
So Cheryl tries to attack Ash through the door. He shoots at her again. Mm-hmm. He slides the flimsy bookshelf in front of the door to try and barricade it even more. This whole time, Scott has been sitting on the couch, just kind of unconscious or basically kind of dead at this point. And then Scott comes to life again, and he attacks.
Very interesting noise sound effects that they use for each one of these kind of like demons. Yeah. Like when he sits up, it's like, and prior to all this too, this is kind of, I kind of like the scene of just like essentially him going insane. Yeah. And I like all the different, I mean, the shots are just shots. It's mm-hmm. not like,
well, we like, deep, yeah, they're like different
very unique shots,
camera angles mm-hmm. that we have at this point. We see the pendulum from the like grandfather clock swing kind of over his face. So we're getting all of these interesting shots that just kind of show that he's losing his mind mm-hmm. with all this craziness. I
mean, most people probably would under these certain circumstances.
Very stressful situation.
He goes, not again.
Gersh, no, that's what he says in the second one.
He goes,
So Scott is starting to attack him. Cheryl is able to bust back in. She starts attacking Ash as well. Mm-hmm. And as they're kind of struggling, the Book of the Dead has been in this room, and it gets closer and closer to the fire that has been burning this whole time.
I did notice, like, throughout the whole movie, that fire was always blazing.
Well, we have a wood fireplace in our apartment, and we have to burn through so much fucking wood to keep that thing going as strong as.
I feel like I've only seen like one shot where they threw something into the fire too.
Yo, Scott only chopped wood once.
Yeah.
So Ash notices the book is so close now that it was kind of pushed to the edge of the fireplace. The book is starting to kind of catch on fire and smoke, and he notices that both Cheryl and Scott, their bodies are smoking as well. Mm-hmm. So
I think it was interesting to show.
Yeah.
So because that wasn't specifically said. It's not like
no, it wasn't like there was no
in order to stop all of this. Burn the book.
Yeah, there's no tie to the bodies in the book technically. So Ash, of course, realizes that if he's able to destroy the book, he can destroy the bodies. So he is at this point he's on the ground. He's being dragged by Scott by Ash's feet over to them, and he's able to, with the necklace that he gave. Poor Linda, that he kept, he's able to hook the book, pull it close enough to him that he can grasp it and throw it into the fire. And so the book burns, and then all of a sudden we have Scott and Cheryl that just start to basically burn as well and completely.
And then just deconstruct and implode.
Yeah,
themselves.
And we have the really fun, what is it?
Stop motion?
Stop motion, I was going to say.
I'm indifferent with those shots. Like whenever I think of this movie, I never really think of those shots specifically because I'm like, okay, it's like for me, I'm like, oh, you did it.
There's a lot of like,
it's still taking a while.
Yeah, I mean, if it was like if anyone has done stop motion at all, even just like something because I think we did as kids for fun because it was like we can make a movie. It takes so much time. So there are points where I saw like Scott's skull, like the top of his skull, move like 1 inch forward and 1 inch back. I think it's one of those things they didn't have to do that, but they did. Yeah.
But the other thing to notice too, like they use different colors. There's like different goos coming out of them.
As the body is decaying, there are like different colors that happen. So
it's really interesting. And Raimi said that he wanted to make it seem like their biology actually changed. Mm-hmm. So he used a lot of ingredients like oatmeal, which was very prevalent. It's just like oatmeal coming out.
A plastic snake.
Some snakes. Guts made out of marshmallow strings, which I didn't notice that either. Yeah. And then Madagascar cockroaches.
I once held a hissing cockroach.
Oh, no.
And then I once used a makeshift flamethrower to kill some other ones.
Oh.
Axe body spray comes in handy every now and then.
Don't knock it.
Don't knock it till you try it. So at this point, Ash is now the only survivor, and it's morning, like dawn is breaking at this point. And he is able to kind of walk outside of the cabin in the daylight and breathe again. And then we have that demonic shot again coming from the cabin, rushing up to Ash as he turns around and just kind of screams. And that's how the movie ends.
There it is.
There it is.
Very, very interesting. I still have a couple more trivia stuff. So this movie, the budget was $350,000, to which it made over $2.6 million. They actually ran out of money about halfway through or so, and both Sam and Bruce were so into this that Bruce actually was able to put up his own family's property in Michigan to use as collateral, just so Sam could finish the film. And then, there's other stuff like Bruce twisted his ankle while running down a hill, and Sam and another member of the crew would constantly tease and poke him at his injuries and stuff with sticks. And that's why he has an obvious limp in some scenes because he actually hurt himself. And then there's other stuff where it's I don't know if there were some that I saw where it was specifically a camera runs into or a cameraman falls down and hit Bruce in the face, knocking teeth out or something. But I saw other sources saying that wasn't true. That's not something that happened. But and then the other thing too is just this movie itself. like in Germany, the movie was released in 1984, and it was hindered by the public authorities for approximately 8 years. The first legal uncut version of this movie entered the German market in 2001 on DVD. And then that version was seized by the German authorities less than a year later. And it wasn't until July of 2016 that an uncut version of the movie was finally redeemed and made legally available in Germany.
Why?
Specific scenes. I don't know. Like there's a lot of countries have different kind of rules when it comes to content and creation. Like there's video games that have rules like that.
Movies from Germany that have been pretty fucked up.
Yeah, I thought so too, but they didn't like this one. Like you see that in video games too. Like I think it was Saints Row 4 or something. Was banned in Australia because it specifically had like a dildo weapon. Like it was just a big ass sword that was like a dildo. And they're like, no, we're not going to have that here.
That is for fun only.
Fun only. And then there's other notes that I saw about like the cabin today and whether or not it's still, there.
Abandoned.
Yeah. Well, there's some that say like the cabin is actually burnt down and all that's left was the chimney, and the crew.
The case.
Yeah. Like the crew actually built a little time capsule and buried it inside the fireplace in the cabin as memento. But apparently like it burnt down. Like I said, the only thing that was in place is the fireplace, which I think they also said too, like they're not telling people where specifically this spot is, and that people are invited to go find it if they want and to find the memento. Something like that. Interesting. I think that's about it that I have for my facts. Like I said, there's tons of different trivia, so I'm sure we missed a shit ton of shit, but what are you going to do? We got time to, we need more time for our IMDb
We don't got
reviews.
time.
We don't got time. We need to see what other people think of this movie.
Okay.
So the reviews on IMDb, male gave it a 7.4 out of 10 and a female 7.1 out of 10. This is for people of our age. So review number 1, The Ultimate in Terror, 10 out of 10. It's the early 80s. What do you expect?
That's fair.
This is a scary film. And I think I know why nowadays can't hold a candle to films like Halloween and Evil Dead. And that is because a photocopy is never as good as the original. That is the bottom line. Directors don't care about a lot of materials that they're filming today, especially when it comes to horror films, and that is because they don't write their own stories. They do someone else's work, but not Evil Dead. This was Raimi's baby from the outset. When the film, like the two mentioned, were filmed, they were filmed by two directors that were complete unknowns. They had no pressure to make a great film, and they did it on an incredibly low budget. Halloween was made for $150,000, and Evil Dead for, this is $50,000. So 50 to, I saw 350.
3?
Yeah, so
that's a pretty big leap. Okay.
So what that meant is the directors could stick to their versions, but they had to find innovative ways to do so. I do like the idea of having a small budget. You set yourself within smaller parameters, and that's where you can get creative. I think when you have, like, oh, we got a budget of $100 million, you've got a lot of money to throw around. And I think when you get your back to the wall, and I think about this too for work or like some of my other jobs that I've had where our budget was really low. So you have to be crafty to really get.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that having a large budget necessarily means that you are going to have a great movie. Just like having a small budget doesn't mean that you're going to have a shitty movie. Yeah. You can
get
find ways that, the like terror and the horror are still there. Right. That you don't like. I've said this before. I don't love when they show the monsters all the time because it ruins it for me. So just kind of like pulling back on even those special effects sometimes, I think is great. Yep. Save some money too.
Their budgets didn't allow a heap of special effects, so they had to rely on what they knew, and that was how to create atmosphere using the camera. And Evil Dead is one of the best at doing that. There is one scene in this film that I will never forget, and that is one of the early scenes where the cast arrives at the cabin. Here we see a long shot of the cabin. It's very eerie music and shows the cabin being menacing. It lets you know that there is evil in the cabin and that they are in for a hell of a ride. Sam Raimi made a masterpiece here, and I believe it stands the test of time. You can put this film against any of today's so-called horror films, and I guarantee you this scares you more. Raimi cares about this movie, and he does everything to make you feel the terror that the cabin people feel. We are scared and disgusted at what happens when one woman goes outside alone and meets a tree that does unspeakable things. And when the book is first introduced, that is the horror movie history there. What a brilliant concept. It's funny, like if I were to say this a little bit different, what a brilliant concept.
Just, yeah,
the book that is
your
evil.
Tone a little bit.
You know, I've often wondered about such books. We hear about them all the time in movies, about ancient Egypt and ancient times. But here we have a book that has weird incantations from another world and another language. And you just know that as soon as some idiot utters the word that they are not supposed to say, well, they won't be around much longer. Okay. Evil Dead is a miracle. It was made on a rock bottom budget, yet it is scarier than any Hollywood movie that is made for 20 million ever hope to be. If you want to truly experience a frightening experience, yep, you heard it right. Rent this film. Rent? I feel like if it's a 10 out of 10, you're going to buy the shit out of this. It knows what it wants to say, and it knows how to make you afraid. So be afraid, be very afraid. You may never look at the forest the same again.
I think this person is stupid.
Yeah.
I mean, to say that this is one of the best like horror movies and nothing else can beat it, I don't think so.
I think I like it because it's a very creative film, working with what you got. And I think it's evident that they're working with what they got. But I wouldn't say it's like, it's good because it's scary. I never was scared of this movie.
Is it good because it's cheap though?
No, I'd say it doesn't go too far out of the parameters of what they establish and set up. Mm-hmm. I don't think they like wrote themselves into too much of a plot hole either. I don't necessarily see too much. That's why I asked about Scott saying that he knew about a path and where that came from. I'm like, oh, well, okay. Well, he just knows.
No, Scott's a dick.
But I still think like, okay, I mean, they're trapped at this cabin. Like I'm trying to think of like different ways in which
they don't try to get out of it.
They don't try, but then again, they're going through forest in which this demon is supposed to be at the same time too. And I'm not going to go in that forest that Cheryl just came from too.
Yeah, but if you have a car.
And Scott came from too.
Yeah, but
you're going to drive your car through the swamp?
That's at the, like, after Scott went through it, that's at the, like, very end when he's getting attacked and really can't escape.
I do think it was dumb too that they were just like, we can't leave. Linda can't even walk. It's like, I mean, yeah, it was a brutal stab, but
you can hobble.
Out of here. But yeah, I think the movie is, I wouldn't say it's like very, very tight, but I wouldn't say it's like loose at the same time. You know what I mean? Like it's there in a package. Not a very tight package. You miss some of the tape on the sides. It's coming undone a little bit.
I can see what the gift is. I'm not that excited.
I'm trying to like not be as subjective when it comes to how I'm looking at it, but it's hard now that I know the context of like how it was made and stuff.
Yeah.
So, review number 2: a movie with more notoriety than it deserves. 1 out of 10. First off, I liked Army of Darkness. Essentially, the film that put the Evil Dead movies on the map. I knew of the 2 prequels, but they were really hard to find for a while. I'm not really a fan of gore per se, so the reviews that described it as such deterred me for a while. However, I couldn't resist. I know people in these sort of movies are compelled to do stupid things, but this one goes over the top. The most cowardly woman in the group goes out alone to look for someone, something was completely out of character.
Yep.
The subsequent violation by demonic foliage was out of place, uncalled for, and unnecessarily gratuitous. Then there's the whole notion that evil supernatural forces are trying to kill them. So let's split the injured girl away from the rest so she can take a nap. That sounds like a sound strategy. That's fair. There are people who are scared by this film, even think that it's the scariest they've ever seen. You probably shouldn't have gone to my high school. You'd just be cowering in the corner somewhere. I wouldn't take other people's, like if someone was scared of this movie, I wouldn't use that against the movie at the same time.
Yeah.
This is their time to make their points. And if they're using that as a point, okay. That person was scared. This movie sucks.
Well, bitch.
They'd be a little bitch at my school. I'm sure they would.
Come stepping into my school.
History class, bitch. The gore effects were about as ridiculous as one could imagine. The stop motion at the end had me laughing while I was watching this episode of MST3K. For comparison, it made a Doctor Who episode of the same era look like Avatar. I can imagine this being a cult movie with its camp appeal, but scary, really? This is one overrated movie. When Evil Dead 2 comes available on streaming Netflix or on demand, I'll probably watch it for completion, certainly with low expectations. I didn't feel like they really had many other points. They had two on inconsistency of character and a strategy.
Well, that and they said it looked shitty. They compared it to Doctor Who, but Doctor Who at that time had been running for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, and that's a pretty unfair comparison, I would say.
Yeah.
Just looking at like the budget,
Right. Okay.
And it's British.
Review number 3. Is it a blood or a ketchup? Exclamation points. 2 out of 10.
A blood or a ketchup?
Is it a blood or a ketchup?
It's chocolate sauce. Hi.
Chocolate. I've always heard about how a great horror film this was and how it's still very great and powerful to its day. And as I'm a huge fan of both classical and horror films, I watched this one, and after I finished it, I just kept looking at the screen because I was so surprised. That was one sentence, by the way. I was really so surprised, not because of its quality, but because of how bad it was. The storyline was so weak. The actors were so naive, not to mention how the scary shoots looked very silly, funny, and so predictable at the same time.
Silly funny.
Silly funny.
Because one is not like the other.
No. It's silly. It's funny.
It shoots and ladders.
Now a lot of people will attack me by saying it's a classic movie. You can't compare it to today's standards. And the answer is, look at horror movies from the same era, such as Friday the 13th, A Nightmare on Elm Street. Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984, so it was actually after this movie.
I think they're saying about the time, not the exact time.
I know, but you can't... How are you going to use that as your...
You can say 80s movies, and you get a general feel versus, like, movies from now. There's a difference.
These are also movies that had bigger budgets.
Right, but I'm saying now we're splitting it. Okay.
And Halloween, which was in the 70s, and you will find the answer yourself. From the first scene, they started by unconvincingly scary shot, which I found it so silly. Then there were a lot of unreasonable shots. How come the only scary person of the whole group leaves the house and goes through the forest without asking for them from her friends? It doesn't make sense.
You know, the only reason it makes sense to me is because we watched Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah, probably. Go outside. And then when she returns back to the house screaming like a drama queen and knocks at the door.
Like a drama queen? She was just
she's
raped.
Got raped. And knocks at the door in a very effective way. No one shows till the end. The end? And how about the huge amount of blood that makes the scenes look so funny rather frightening? And I asked myself while watching it, is it a blood or a ketchup?
Reread what you've written, guys. I can't stress this enough.
Sorry, but I don't recommend this film to anybody, even to my enemies.
Oh, I hate when people say that.
I know. Final rate, 2 out of 10. Well, I just don't think that's fair. Once again, you bring up, which is a very fair point. I think it's a fair point. Her going outside and just wandering outside. regardless if she's the most scared out of anyone just going outside and continuing to walk into
in
the
the
forest.
middle of the woods when you hear voices or like something out there, because something crunching out there, what do you think you're gonna find?
Right.
It's not gonna be a squirrel.
Yeah. The only other thing too, I'm not using this as a defense, but she was possessed at a certain point too. Like her hand was possessed, and so there's like lingering effects that you see with her up until that point too. And I don't know if maybe they were trying to be like, well, she's being pulled by this connection that she has or whatever. But that's not. I'm not saying that that's established at all from what we're seeing.
Yeah,
but you do see specifically her hands.
Her hand, yeah. I mean, her hand gets possessed, but she's the whole time she's like, oh,
yeah. Okay, Jessica. So why don't you give me your final review?
So I know this is a cult classic. People love this. I didn't. I thought the acting was terrible. The lines were poorly written. The plot was okay, but there were some like Scott knowing that there's a trail out of there. That's a big part of it. How did they not try that? I understand that they had a small budget, but I don't know. I wasn't my favorite. I don't know if I'd really recommend it to people. So I'm gonna rate this pretty low, like a 3.2.
Dang.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but
Wow.
I was not impressed by it because like we have movies like, and I know there is a bigger budget, but Poltergeist, who even the storyline is more interesting to me, and I think the acting's a lot better. So even just kind of taking it from those two, those are big ones for me.
I'm having trouble just because I feel like I know too much contextually. I know that all of these actors are college students. Mm-hmm. They don't have the same experience as everyone else. This was a movie that was created by 20-year-olds with the hopes of doing this for a living and everything. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they really had a hard time trying to get this out. They needed people to. They were like spreading word, literally by like word of mouth to people, just to get people to watch this movie too. So it's like I can understand the struggle, and I understand
you're getting emotional,
but I still very much appreciate like you can see where they're going with I'd say like the plot, like you said, I still think it's pretty simple for what it is. Part of me just doesn't want to fault it to that because it's.
I don't mind a simple plot. I just don't think they set it up properly, especially like with the relationships between the characters in the movie and just kind of the backstory and telling like, I guess, showing how people were possessed more and how that kind of transition happens or, what that really means. I felt like it was they pushed through a lot.
Yeah. And I could see that. I can see because a lot of that was predicated on, saying the words, and then that's how it all happens, and that shit was broken loose, even though it was already kind of loose to begin with, right? Mm-hmm. Like because it was like following, and you have all these shots.
You don't know how it.
When did it actually come out? It was that scene where it's coming out of the ground and it's red. Like what is the demon or the ghost that's already out there before they say the words?
Or from when this person recorded themselves, the first person recorded themselves, to them being possessed and killed, like. How did that kind of demonic being go away? Was it just a couple of years that it just goes back to sleep without anything around? Or when it kills all of its victims? Like, I guess I don't really... So there's stuff that I wanted to know a little bit more of, and I don't think that they explained enough.
Right.
And there's only for me, I feel like there's only so much leeway I can give that, like, oh, well, they're college students, it's a short budget, this and that. Before I'm just kind of giving them too much of an allowance.
Yeah, and I don't want to give this movie too much of an allowance either, just because I subjectively really enjoyed this movie. Yeah. So I think my final rating for this movie is I'm going to give it a 4.3. One, because it's like in certain ways it's a competent movie for what it is. But in other ways, like some things you just can't look past. Mm-hmm. the acting, especially, and like you said, the characters too, and they don't really mesh very well
There's
together.
not a lot
There's
of chemistry
some,
between any of them.
there wasn't a lot of, and we were talking about how there wasn't a lot of chemistry between Ash and Linda. We didn't even know that Cheryl was his sister until they specifically point that out.
Someone yells out like
they literally,
your sister
yeah,
or something.
that was the only time. Stuff like that, and yeah, the interactions and the script itself, in which they're or the writing for their dialogue is pretty choppy and not the greatest.
And there are some scenes too that like the camera will be focused, like when there's some shots like they're sitting in the car and the camera's focused on the mirror,
the car mirror,
the like side mirror of the car instead of the actual people talking in the car. So our focus from the camera, literally the focus is on that mirror and everything else is kind of blurred. So there are moments where it's like, it's very evident that like, I don't know, it kind of...
Yeah, you can tell there's a lot of limitations to this movie, which is unfortunate. And it makes you wonder, like, if they didn't have all of those limitations, what kind of movie this would be.
I think the concept, I think, is pretty interesting.
I think the concept itself is just fine.
Yeah.
When it gets down to the granular how things work, they definitely could explain that. I think they should explain it differently. Instead of just listening to the tape over, like listening to the old man talk about whatever, they can find it in different ways, just to make it a little bit more interesting, just so we're not getting all of the exposition right then and there. And sometimes they just like, I forget what that guy says sometimes, or like that he says something else throughout every time I watch this movie too. So yeah, it hurts me to say, but yeah, I'll give it a 4.3. But I will recommend it just because I like the craft. I can tell that, someone that's like I've made like short films and stuff before. There's a lot of work that goes into shit like that. And when you're doing something like this and the amount of work that they put in, and
you appreciate it a lot more.
You appreciate it more. And some of the special effects too. Like there's some of it that actually holds up pretty well. And then obviously there's some that really don't. The blood looks really good.
Pretty good. Yeah. And even for movies today, like more recent movies that we see, the blood looks like shit.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, 4.3.
Okay, fair enough.
I'll give it that. Thank you for listening. This I'm not sure how long this one is, but we really got into it. For more updates regarding new episodes, give us a follow. Give us a follow on Facebook. Give us a follow on Instagram. Give us a follow on Twitter and even on Pinterest. Search for @FAD_podcast. And guess what? We're also on YouTube. So if you're really bored and you want to just like look at something. If you
don't want to feel alone.
Listen to us.
And feel not as alone.
Yeah. So you can watch us there because guess what? We're everywhere. With technology today, we're up in the clouds. And as always, just let us know what movies you want us to review next.
Yeah, give us some recommendations. We'll spin them. We'll give you a shout out.
We will give you a shout out live.
Unless your handles like Boobs McGee.
Yeah, then we're
69.
Then we're really gonna say it. You'll be the first thing we say.
Yeah.
This episode brought to you by Boobs McGee.
I think we'd be pretty excited by that.
I'd be really excited to say it. And with that, adieu to you, Jessica.
And Folie, adieu to you too.
Blow the man down, and pray pay attention and listen to me. Give me some time to blow the man down. I'm a deep water sailor just in from Hong Kong. Give me way, blow the man down. If you give me some ground.